You're listening to the Bulldog Hour, getting you inside the Wilson football program with weekly game previews, recaps, highlights, and interviews. Now, here are your hosts, Joe Mays and Justin Raffoff.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the Bulldog Hour, episode 9 of our 5th season. I'm Joe Mays. Sitting next to me is my co-host, Justin Raffoff.
Yeah, it's good to be back, and it's hard to believe we're through August already, into September now, right? So,
yeah, it's September 1st. Happy September.
As I told the kids on Thursday, first month down.
First month is over, guys.
Yeah, they kind of gave me the same glare. I picture that you would typically, but you know how it is.
Yeah, we said it at West then that week too, and they did not find it funny. So.
No, but which just honestly makes me enjoy it more.
Right, it makes it funnier to us. Yeah. So whatever. But welcome back to the show. Happy start of meteorological fall. I know my daughter will tell me
that's not a thing.
That is a real thing. Climatologically speaking, September 1st is the start of fall. So don't at me, but. Fall is the best season of the year. I don't know why people are disappointed.
Fall is the best season of the year. I agree.
I know there's plenty of people that are gung-ho on summer, and I get it. Especially when you're a kid, summer's amazing. Yeah. But, looking at it, everyone knows that the last 4 months of the year, are by far the best months of the year.
Okay, now you're stretching it out a bit far. I don't know.
September through December, absolutely.
I'd say it caps at the end of November.
No. You can't forget December. December rules. So, but September's here, and the way the team ended August was pretty good.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, a lot of fun, and we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about it on the show because. Well, it's been a while that we've been this happy at the beginning of the season. If you can believe it, with how good Wilson is historically, it's actually been a few years since we've been in the situation where we can say, hey, Wilson's 2-0.
Yeah, and we talk about this a lot, and people actually ask us about this a lot, but we have fun kind of sitting down and talking about it a lot, on away games. Not so well, actually, due to traffic in Shillington, a little bit after this away game too, but, we like talking about football, going to the games. We talk about football on the way from the games. We talk about football, texting each other all week long. That's essentially what drives our conversation on and off of camera.
Well, and
but it's a lot more fun to talk about
winning
when it's going well. Yeah,
it's going really well.
Yeah, and I shared that with someone last Monday. Someone asked me how'd it go. I was like, it went great. But to be honest, it's a lot more fun when it's going great. So,
really, the reason we started our original show, the show that we still do when we don't have Wilson football to talk about, the Joe Mays and J-Raff show, which we started way back in February 2011, essentially was we talk about sports a lot. Maybe we should, put it out there and see if anyone else agrees with us or would latch on. And, there's moderate success and viewership on that show. But when we brought this one back, now this is our 5th season, this one kind of gained traction quickly, and now it's starting to really pick up. And it really only originated, both of them, because we talk about this stuff anyways, texts, phone calls, everything. We share stories. Let's just put it out there and let other people hear what we have to say. Maybe you won't like what we have to say, but hopefully you do. And anytime you're talking about a Wilson destruction of Mifflin, people are going to be happy to hear us talk about it. So,
some people,
most of people, I think people watching the show,
viewing, yes,
I would think the people watching this show. I mean, I don't know if you're a Mifflin alum or a Mifflin fan if you want to be watching the show ever, but especially after Friday night, I don't think you want to be watching the show.
Yeah, I liked the text you got on Friday as we were sitting in traffic waiting to come home. Proud to be a Bulldog.
Proud to be a Bulldog, yeah. That would be from my brother-in-law, who is a Mifflin graduate, but lives in Wilson now. And I've always been saying, I was like, you got to give up those Mifflin ties. Your son's going to go to Wilson. You live in Wilson. It's over. And, this week every year is a little bit back and forth. But after the result, he sent that text. Yep, proud to be a Bulldog. LOL. Yeah, but that's how we're all feeling. So it was a great weekend. But let's get into it. We did this at the end last week, so we're going to do this at the start, especially because we have a new show sponsor this evening. So we want to thank Topher's 10th and Elm Cafe for joining the support of the Bulldog Hour, also with my dad at May's Sandwich Shop and our 2 anonymous donors. We appreciate the support that all these people and businesses have given to us for our 5th season here in 2019. Again, May's Sandwich Shop, Topher's 10th and Elm Cafe, and our 2 anonymous donors. There are plenty of ways that you can support us. Sponsorship and advertising is one way, or donations. The website, definitely check bulldoghour.com. There's a lot of stuff there to keep you informed on the program and all the happenings surrounding the program. And then also social media, spreading the word. Make sure you like and share. In addition to the sponsors of the Bulldog Hour, I also want to thank the individuals, Ted and Jeff, who donated to the live streams this week. They appreciate the being able to watch the games. And I just said, if anyone is interested in sponsoring it, let me know. And they reached out and they donated and helped defray the cost of doing those weekly live streams. I do want to thank Justin Burke, Wilson alum. He's a class of 2013. He played on the Wilson football 2012 district championship team. He coaches with us out at West. He is the guy that runs up and down on the sidelines with my iPad to broadcast the game. So he has been the guy behind the camera now for this is the 3rd season. We started this back in 2017. I believe actually in week 3 against Central Dauphin in 2017 is when these kind of took off, and he has been the guy helping us. So I do want to mention Justin Burke and thank him for helping us the last few years. Of course, I mentioned that he won't be at the game Friday this week, but we'll have a pinch hitter with us this Friday. Yeah. I think it might be Corey Grath, who helps us out at West as well. And if you saw pictures from the Reading Eagle, you saw Mr. Grath in the background doing his best touchdown impersonation as Avanti trotted into the end zone. And we'll see video from that very shortly. Our next live show will be a week from now, probably in the evening, our normal time of 8:30, and we'll be recapping Game 3 against Springford and previewing Game 4, which will be back at Gursky against Mannheim Central. All right, and real quickly, just to throw up that annual schedule here, what's happening in 2019, we are completely done with the left side now. Heat Week through Governor Mifflin over, and I'm not sure it could have gone any better, because they look great against Parkland in the scrimmage, and you beat Central Dauphin, you beat Governor Mifflin. I mean, that's basically a perfect slate.
Yeah, they moved through those, starting to come together a little bit. We talked about after Central Dauphin, we talked about things that we'd like to see and things that we thought were going really well. They were able to build on that this week, and a theme throughout this is probably going to be to build on that to go into next week, but we're going to be looking for some different things next week, but that's for a different part of the show.
Oh yeah, for sure. So we will get to the Springford preview. Again, that's this coming Friday, September 6th, down in Royersford. We will preview the matchup with the other Rams that we're playing this year at the end of this show, but up first is going to be our recap of the Mifflin game. Let's get to some statistics before we get to the video and our player of the game. And, guess I should have that up. All right. So, I mean, it was complete domination by the Bulldogs Friday evening. There's no real way to, you can't say it any other way. There was very little to not like, at least as a spectator. And we'll talk with Coach Doms gave us some things he'd like to see improve, but
yeah, he had a list.
But that's what the head coach is supposed to do.
Right.
But through the first 3.5 quarters, Wilson played a nearly flawless game. The only time Mifflin, and this was the majority of their starters still, could penetrate Wilson, either stop them defensively or score, was against Wilson's JV team. Like, it wasn't even, your backups. It was legitimately the Wilson JV team. And, it was just an incredible performance all around, top to bottom. It's just everyone performed the way they needed to, and it was surprising. I went on record to a few people saying that I expected Wilson to win by 3 touchdowns. I was predicting 31-10. I just thought the way Wilson was playing, they had gotten the Central Dauphin monkey off their back. They showed how powerful they are in the trenches, and knowing that Mifflin was finding new starters there, I didn't know that they could handle what Wilson was going to throw at them, and that was even more true than I thought it would be.
Yeah, when I was watching some of the plays, plays that looked like when we were on offense, when it looked like maybe, it was stuff for nothing, were like 2 and 3 yard gains because our offensive line was moving the line of scrimmage that far. You know what I mean? So, like, it looked like they were getting met at the line, and in reality, they were getting 2 or 3 yards. And in defense, we kept resetting that line of scrimmage back a couple yards every time, and that makes that there's a lot of timing in every offense, obviously, but there's a lot of timing and everything that needs to, and misdirection. Well, when one side of the line is getting blown up, or if people are coming through, or the ends are crashing in, like, it makes it hard to get that deception from the offense that Mifflin's running. And Wilson was able to contain it very well. And the discipline was, for the most part, I thought was very, very good. You saw some guys who were maybe on the far side, and the ball's kind of going away, and they stay home, and the ball comes back to them. Like, that's the kind of stuff you need, because it just takes one of those, like, collapses, or one of those that you're not really paying attention to. One little lapse, and next thing you know, somebody could be gone, 30, 40, 50 yards down the side, and that can change everything, especially early on. So to maintain that focus, when Wilson jumped out early, I started thinking they need to keep going, because I just remember back to 2 years ago when we visited, it was the flip. Like, Mifflin's came out and kind of got a few, not necessarily super early scores, but in the first half they were scoring, and the next thing you know, they're up, I think, 21-0.
Yep.
And then Wilson comes back, and it looks like they're driving, but things kind of stalled out. But I was like, I don't want that to happen. I don't want, just keep it going. And they were able to keep it going. I think it said when I was reading up, like, Wilson scored on their first 8 possessions. Like,
yeah, I believe you're correct. They did not attempt to punt until deep into the second half. I don't think Caleb, the main punter, got to punt ever.
No.
Actually, they may have only punted once, and it was blocked. And this is, and Wilson had to take a timeout to get the JV punt team on, and then that's what ended up happening. That's how Governor Mifflin got their second touchdown. But, I mean, it was complete domination. There's no other way to say it. Wilson came out, fired up. Governor Mifflin elected to receive the opening kickoff instead of deferring to the second half. They wanted to see what they could do against the Wilson defense, and it was nothing. Right. They forced a 3-and-out. They got a punt. Wilson scored, kicked off, forced another 3-and-out, got the ball back again, scored. Like, it was that kind of game. Mifflin had just a couple first downs.
And a couple, like, one of the early possessions, they had us backed up. Like, it was like third and really long. I say really long, not like 30 yards or anything, but it might have been third and more than 10, or at least close to 10. And we completed the long pass, like a 30-yard pass or so, like,
to Brady.
Yeah,
I believe it was actually like 41.
It could
or
have
something
been,
like
yeah.
that.
But, like, it's one of those where that's when you start thinking, well, you don't need some breaks like that always, but it certainly helps when that you are getting some of those. So it was just nice to see everybody kind of did what they were supposed to do. Again, we talked about it in Central Dauphin, like, not necessarily expecting to get the ball at your half-yard line. In my mind, I'm just thinking, let's just get out to even midfield and punt it, make them have to go the whole way. Well, they just kept it. They never gave it back. I was confident in the groups up front on both sides of the ball, but you just never know how it's going to go. And I was glad that they didn't seem content with the win over Central Dauphin. Like, that was one of the things I mentioned to you before, was like, I'm confident that if Wilson shows up, I was saying this before the game, if Wilson shows up, that I feel like they're going to be fine. However, it's high school football, and I'm worried that they're going to think, well, we just beat Central Dauphin.
Right.
And not that they're knowingly doing this, not that they're, decidingly saying, like, oh, this game isn't as big. Like, that's not what I mean, but just, if you lose some of that edge going into the next week, it can change everything.
Well, and this dates back to our interviews with the senior players, talking about this is a group leadership effort. There isn't necessarily one guy that's stepping up. And what's nice is that each and every game they're buying into, what is seen as cliches in coach speak, but they find a chip on their shoulder for every opponent.
Right.
Central Dauphin was easy. We hadn't beaten them since 2014.
Right.
This senior class had never beaten them. They knew what was at stake. You got a couple guys that have played since their freshman year. They've never beaten them. They wanted to beat
happen
them.
At Wilson,
right?
Either. Like,
so, and they made sure it didn't happen. And then they remembered, yeah, okay, so we beat Mifflin last year at home, but hey, we've never beaten Mifflin at Mifflin.
Right.
And that was what they were latching onto this week. They want to make sure that they're celebrating their senior season every single week. And I mean, it's certainly refreshing. It's amazing to see. And I'm glad that I don't want them to buy too much into themselves. No matter what the score is, no matter who the opponent is, if you get that victory, reset the next week and try to show everyone that, we need to win this week to continue this trend and to get to where we need to be.
Right.
And, that's what hopefully they're going to this week the same way against Springford. Now they've beaten Springford twice. Springford hasn't beaten Wilson.
But they're going to have that fire coming to beat Wilson.
Right.
Like, yeah, like, we're a couple weeks in. Not that it's football. There aren't as many games. Not that you're going to fly under the radar or anything, but you're going to be, they want so badly to beat you. Springford is going to have that target, like we mentioned. They're going to be a little different style than what we've seen.
Yeah.
But like, it's just one of those things where, and even though they just proved to me this past week that like they didn't overlook anyone, they were ready to go, all that stuff. When we get down to Royersford next weekend, I'm probably going to be standing there thinking too, like, man, I hope they're ready to go.
I know.
But it's the same thing.
Yeah,
and that's not. I don't mean that about them.
It's not detrimental to them.
It's a me problem.
It's an anxiety.
Not
yeah, that's an us thing.
Yeah.
We're going to be anxious about it every single week. But the best thing is that they are cool under pressure going into it with high expectations, or maybe with people having low expectations of them.
Right.
They seem to be calm and resilient. And I hope they take this week to week like the coaches always want them to, because so far it's worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the stats of Mifflin before we get to the highlights from Mifflin. I'm not sure we've said the final score, but it was 61-14. That's the most points ever scored by one of the teams in the rivalry. Wilson previously has scored 60 against Mifflin twice. 61's the most ever by either team. Up until the middle of the fourth, it was slated to be the biggest victory by either team in the rivalry, and then Mifflin got those 2 touchdowns at the end. The biggest victory is from the 1989 Wilson team that beat Mifflin 49-0, and but it just was completely in control, never in doubt. A Bulldogs victory all the way, 61-14. Got 3 touchdowns at the beginning from Avante Lockhart. First was a 29-yard pass from Caleb Brown. The next 2 were runs by Avante. In between 2 Brady Gibble touchdown receptions was a Mason Leonard run. He then opened up and basically finished the scoring for the varsity squad, for the first team squad, the starters, with a 65-yard run on the first offensive play for the Bulldogs in the second half. And then some seniors and young guys got to score the next 2 touchdowns, and then Mifflin's got those 2 scores late in the fourth to even it 61-14. But like you mentioned, second half Wilson scored 19, only playing their starters 1 drive, and Mifflin scored 14. So even in the second half, using everyone at Wilson's disposal, getting some young kids some meaningful playing time in a varsity game.
We've talked about that in past years when we've had those opportunities. That leads to experience for the next round of guys. It was interesting. This is a little off topic but related. We listened to the Unrivaled podcast a lot, and Micah Parsons was the interview this year, and they were talking about some of his adventures through high school football and things like that. And they were talking about his senior season, and he talked about how the team he was playing for, Harrisburg, was blowing a lot of teams out, and so he only had to play half. So he's talking about just how fast the season went. That's something we talk about a lot, is how quick the season goes. And he was acknowledging that, but he was saying how much faster it went that year because he only ever got to play half of games. He wasn't playing in the second half of almost any of their games. Not just him, but other guys too. And he's like, as a high school kid, that's tough to kind of take sometimes, but it was exciting because it meant they were successful, but it was just one of those tough things. Yeah, like being able to get the experience for that next wave of guys, and some of those guys that don't always get on the field or get the experience, because you never know when you're going to need them. You hope it's not until their time comes, but you never know when you're going to need somebody to step up and play.
It didn't help Mifflin that they kind of a little bit were their own undoing, or gave Wilson extra motivation for doing things that their fans are known to do in the Wilson-Mifflin rivalry, as we saw that they had whether they purchased it or stole it, I don't know, Bulldog country flag that they had spray painted X on and wrote bye week on, which it certainly felt like a bye, but not in the way that they had hoped. And as Zach's pointing out, apparently, and you alluded to this a little bit to me in private, that once again, Mifflin students were driving through Wilson, stealing the Bulldog statues that you can buy at like Lowe's and Home Depot. Apparently, Zach says that they were spray painting them to be Mifflin colors.
That could,
yeah. So I don't know why. Like, how much dislike I have for student sections in general, because
this is not specific to this game. It is.
It's not, and it's not even only like ones that Wilson plays against. Like the Wilson student section at times over the years has gotten on my nerves because they don't understand when to do certain things sometimes.
Right.
But this is not a reflection on the Wilson student section. I'm talking about kind of fans in general. The student section, just, you got to understand when to do some things, when not to do some things. And I don't think stealing property and, doing things that are going to motivate the other team ever help your team. Like, you're not helping the team.
Right.
Now, people will be like, well, if they would have won, like, it would be fine. But they didn't, and it was kind of embarrassing what happened. And now you just have all this fuel, and I don't know. That's just not something that you ever want to do. First of all, you're breaking the law. So, and we've seen over the years that sometimes they don't make the smartest decisions, because 2 years ago they took a picture of their own license plate and posted it, and I don't think that went well for the individual that posted that. So maybe stop doing that, because obviously it's not working.
Yeah.
But
our guys are ready to go. Whatever as I was standing there on Friday night, I'm talking to you about how I just hope the guys are ready to go. But the second part of that, I was like, it's Mifflin, so I expect them to be ready to go. I don't expect them to not be prepared. You know what I mean? Like, it's those things, like all the stuff I'm seeing and know tell me they will be fine, but that doesn't calm my anxiety at all.
Right.
So.
No. Sometimes that happens. Yeah. But so stats, you got 61-14, first downs, Wilson 20 to Mifflin 6, net rushing yards 312 to 116, and a majority of those Mustang 116 was well after the game had gotten out of control. Wilson passed for 141 yards to just 34 for Mifflin, and total offense 453 to 150 in favor of the Bulldogs. It's just incredible. Wilson had the one interception, and penalties were fairly even. Wilson ended up with 7 for 54 yards. Mifflin had 6 for 52. Possession time, actually not all that different. Wilson had a slight advantage by about 2 minutes, but not a huge discrepancy. Bulldogs defense held on 7 of 8 third down conversions, which was great again. And more importantly for the Wilson offense, they were 4 for 4 in the red zone.
Yeah.
And it's just a great performance. Individual performances, individual statistics, like I said, or will say in the interview, Mason Leonard had just 3 rushes, but he made them all count. 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, long of 65, averaging over 35 yards per carry. I mentioned after things had gotten out of hand and Leonard and Lockhart were done, Jaden Jones came in, and I said to people on the sideline, I was like, in terms of experience, it's a step down, but in terms of talent, it's not that big of a drop off, because Jaden Jones is an incredible talent at running back. So I didn't think Mifflin was going to fare that much better. Sure, he had some backups and JV players on the line, so maybe that helped Mifflin a little bit, but all he did was carry 7 times for 88 yards and a touchdown, including the 30-yard scamper on 4th down to score.
Yeah.
And at that point, everyone just kind of threw their hands up in the air, like, I don't know what to do. Like, this isn't anymore. We're not trying to run this down your throat. We're not trying to rub it in. Obviously, this coaching staff is not trying to run up the score, but you're not able to stop us doing anything.
Right.
It just, at that point, we just knew that this team is just that much better.
Right.
Which is great to see. So, Caleb Brown, the quarterback, also had 64 yards rushing. And Avante, we mentioned he had 2 rushing touchdowns, and he picked up some of the tough yardage, getting 50 total rushing yards on the night. Caleb Brown, he only completed 5 of his 12 passes, but those also counted. 132 yards, 3 touchdowns, with a long of 44.
And there were a couple of really close ones there too.
Yeah,
would have
just
really added to the yardage, but were just off. And those are things that, like, honestly, and this will sound kind of crazy, but if you look back at Central Dauphin, they missed on some long ones by maybe a few yards. You know what I mean? Like, the timing looked off by a few yards on some of the shots they took downfield. On Friday night, I feel like they were off by inches. You know what I mean? Like, so when you look, that's trending in the right direction, and I think his confidence was building. So I'm pleased with that, and I'm sure that even though the numbers would say 5 of 12, it felt much more efficient than that.
So the the couple passes that I can remember, there's one just over the outstretched hand of Alex Pocket. He was able to do some stuff with his legs, and he connected on a few nice deep balls. So,
yeah, well, that one to Brady, was that a 4th down? The long pass to Brady?
I don't
think
it
could have been
so.
third.
I think it was a third.
I don't know. I think you're right, but that was a beautiful catch.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to say that anything didn't go Wilson's way, but defensively speaking, Adrian Santana and Avante Lockhart led the way with 4 total tackles. Nate Keller had 3, 2 of them for loss, including a sack. Adam Venino also had a sack, and we had the interception from Mason Leonard, contributing not just on offense but on defense as well. So all around, just an incredible performance. So let's take a look at some of the highlights from Wilson's victory over the Mustangs. And we're starting right away after the opening kickoff, right here on defense. We're going to see Mason Leonard fly up the field, hit the quarterback who fumbles. Now, Mifflin would recover at the 2, but Wilson would force a punt. And on the series immediately after that, we're going to see Caleb Brown find Avante.
Third and 13.
Yep. And he just refused to quit, wouldn't go down, and gets the touchdown. That put Wilson up and kind of set the tone immediately. You force them to go 3 and out. They think they have you stopped in a 3rd and long, and they just said no.
Right. That could swing momentum right back, but it didn't.
And after another Mifflin punt, Caleb Brown called his number on an RPO.
Even after the stumble, I honestly thought he was going to outrun them. Or
on a read play, he picked up a big gain rushing, and then they gave it to Avante again, and this time again, he just refused to go down, getting into the end zone again for his second touchdown of the night, first rushing touchdown.
Grabbing him up near the shoulder pads and swinging him around was not real effective.
And now you're going to see the 3rd and 18.
Yeah.
And Brady Gibble hauls this one in at the 20. The Mifflin Change Gangs insisted that he didn't catch that ball, though you had video and I had photography that proved otherwise.
Yeah.
And here we see
the patience there too.
Avante, just waiting and finding the end zone. He gets touchdown number 3. Wilson goes up 21-0 early second quarter, and that wouldn't be the end of things. Clearly, as the Wilson defense would get involved on a sack here, not knowing what to do on the rush from Nate Keller. After a punt, Wilson gets the ball back, and now we see the Brown to Gibble connection again. This one for a touchdown, putting Wilson up 27-0. I believe a botched snap and hold meant the extra point failed. But it's 27-0. Just a couple plays later, Wilson recovers a Mifflin fumble, and they would still try to get more before the half was out. And this one is going to be to Mason Leonard, who's going to take the run all the way to the end zone, and he looked fast all night.
Yes.
All night long, Mason looked quick.
He didn't have the angle. The guy, the tackler had the angle, and he just beat him to the spot.
Right. So, Bulldogs now up 35-0 after the 2-point conversion by Nate Hoekstra. The next possession, Mason Leonard this time picks off the pass, takes it back into Mifflin territory. and he would set up what would be Brady Gibble's second touchdown of the night, and it would be the final scoring for Wilson in the first half. Is you're going to see Brown to Gibble on a little quick hitch screen pass, great block, flies up the sideline, dives for the pylon, gets in, touchdown. Wilson goes in at half up 42-0. Now, this is the opening offensive series for the Bulldogs of the third quarter. Give to Leonard 65 yards gone, making people miss, and just showing off his speed, outracing everyone. And that would be his second of the evening. He would let everyone know that. And Wilson would be up big again, 55. Or it wouldn't be 55 yet. It was at 49. And then we get to see the senior, Amen Kenny, taking a Nick Williams pass in for the score. And now the Jaden Jones run that we talked about earlier on 4th down, 4th and 11, 4th and 12. He goes off the left side, 30 yards to the house. And I believe that was Wilson's final touchdown. No. Did that put him up 61, I think? Yeah, Kenny got him to 55. Jones got him to 61. And now we get to see here Mifflin against the Wilson JV defense. Nice play by Tomeo, though, to what I thought he was down at the 1 or 2. They called it a touchdown. So and then JV punt, Cameron Stewart for Mifflin?
Yes. Cameron
Stewart gets the block, scores that in the end zone. But there you go. Final score 61-14 in favor of the Bulldogs. All around great performance. Special teams, offense, defense. Great to see. It's what we want to see. And not much else to say about that.
No, they took care of business. They did what they should do. The offensive line, we knew coming out of week 1, is strong. They went out and proved that they were strong. We knew that the running backs, that they're talented and deep at that position. And we proved, I believe, again, that they're talented and deep at that position.
Yeah.
I liked some of the things we saw from Caleb and the receivers. Again, another receiver, another spot where they have some depth. There's multiple options. They were able to run the ball again. And it's one of the things that we're starting to notice. When you can run the ball, it starts to open up all kinds of different options. And that ties in a lot of different things, but it is interesting to kind of see how that, when that gets going, how that can set up all kinds of success. And on defense, again, just playing that discipline and, being able to make sure that you're doing your job, you play your role. It can be really tough when you're going against that Mifflin defense, because a lot of times you may think you know what's coming and you're going to, if I just go here. No, listen, the defense is set up to stop, as a team, to stop this play. You need to play your assignment and then trust that everyone else will play their assignment and you'll be fine. And thankfully, that's how it kind of played out. But sometimes all it takes is if the wrong person at the wrong time doesn't play their assignment, they can exploit that pretty quickly. So
now, because of the victory, we got to talk to players and coaches after the game. So we're going to hear from the running backs, Mason Leonard and Avanti Lockhart, defensive coordinator Ernie Wolber, and head coach Doug Doms. All right, we're post-game after a huge Wilson victory over Governor Mifflin. And before I forget, I'm going to walk out here so they can actually talk into the microphone. And joining us now are the two significant contributors in the backfield, though we saw a lot of guys carry the ball tonight. The main guys are senior Avanti Lockhart, junior Mason Leonard, and guys over 300 yards rushing after putting up a fierce battle against Central Dauphin last week. Come out and do this against Mifflin. What did you see in the week leading up in practice? Did you think you were going to be able to rumble like this?
Pretty much, yeah. We saw that we were weak. They were weak up front, and that we could just dominate them from the start.
We got some big boys on the line, and they're strong, and they block good for us.
Not much like it.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So, Mason, you only got the ball, according to these stats, 3 times, but you rushed for 110 yards, averaging 36.7 per carry, scoring 2 touchdowns. Avanti, you got the tough yardage. You got the rock 10 times for 53 yards, but you got 2 on the ground and 1 through the air, and you had 1 called back. I know you were flashing the 4 up on the way as you walked in, but it's tough. But, what do you guys have to say about the team after the first 2 weeks?
We just got to keep improving week by week.
I think we're looking good, but yeah, we got to keep on improving.
And what's one thing that you think you need to improve going into the spring forward in week 3?
I think we need to do a better job wrapping up on defense and finishing blocks on
I
offense.
think it's our secondary because they have a pretty good quarterback coming back.
Absolutely.
And pretty good receivers too. So
Now,
we'll just have to see.
I mean, you guys both start on defense as well. Avante, you led the way, tied with Adrian for 4 tackles. And Mason, I believe you picked off a pass, didn't you?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, two-way stars here with me tonight, Mason Leonard, Avante Lockhart. Great game against Mifflin, and we look forward to another great week next week against Springford.
We're looking
Thank
forward
you.
to it too.
Looking forward to it
All right.
as well.
Are you ready? All right, joining me now, our first regular season coach interview. We heard from him in the preseason. Always a great interview. And tonight, Coach, I know it was rough seeing them score near the end. You lose the shutout, but you have to be happy with the way your first team played tonight.
Yeah, they played extremely well. You can put all the X and O's on the whiteboard, but the bottom line is kids got to know it. And we had some more stuff we didn't run tonight, but the kids executed so perfectly. I mean, they had one quarterback run early, and that's about like 10 yards. Other than that, we played well, so I'm really proud of the kids.
Is there something you saw that they do or that they kind of give away that you just knew where to put your guys? Or is it just the discipline, the dedication, the strength that your front seven have shown the first 2 weeks?
I think that's a big part of it. We felt as if with certain motions they do and certain alignments they had that we could get some advantages and put the people at the point of attack. And I think they did a really nice job doing that. But up front, we are so physical. I mean, I'm not going to say we're the best, but we're pretty good right now up front. And it's going to be tough to run the ball on us.
Were you surprised how few touches Nick Singleton got in the first half?
Stunned is a better word. I thought he was the game. I mean, if he gets his 100, it's tough to beat him. And he only had 3 carries for 10 yards at half. And I think he ended up with 9 carries for like 30-some yards or something like that. But yeah, he's a D1 football player. He's a stud. And we knew we had to take him out early. We thought him and the quarterback were going to beat us. And that should get the ball.
Doing this without Matt Fry in the secondary the first 2 weeks, but you had 2 teams that were physical in the trenches. They wanted to pound the ball. We're going to go a 180 next week with Springford.
Yes.
A week to prepare, but what are you thinking right now heading into the spread them out, throw a deep passing game you're probably going to see?
We did a really nice job this summer learning all these things and going against all the spreads and doing different things. We'll see more speed at defensive line now for us. We got, Capitano, Schrufer, Colorado, Ethan, Ashcroft, like we call him Colorado. It's easier. But we got some speed guys who can also rush a pass a little bit, so they'll definitely be part of the game plan next week.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have tonight. A huge victory for the Bulldogs, 61-14 over rival Mifflin, the most points ever scored by one team in the rivalry. So thank you, Coach Wolver, for joining us, and hopefully we'll talk to you again real soon.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
All right, last interview of the night. We're here with Wilson head coach Doug Doms. Coach, that was quite the effort in every phase of the game. Once again, second week in a row, you got total effort, offense, defense, special teams. Wasn't as close as the last week, but coming out with a victory like this, most points ever scored by any team in the rivalry. And but you wouldn't be doing your job if there wasn't something you want to work on. So tell us something you want them to work on heading into Springford.
I think we were a little soft in our coverage. We got to tighten our coverage up a little bit. I think we still got to keep working on reading keys. Outside linebackers, I didn't think did a really good job recognizing the option game. Defensively, those are some things we got to work on. Offensively, we got to keep working on sustaining our blocks. They're coming off the blocks a little too fast. And, we threw the ball well, but there were some receivers there was a couple times that we were open and missed. So, that's going to happen with a young quarterback. But that's why we had to throw. Got to get him ready because sooner or later we're going to have to throw.
You're obviously confident in your game plan going in. It worked perfectly. Was there anything that Mifflin did or didn't do that surprised you?
No, I think they pretty much played into our game plan. Was very good. Ernie did a great job with the defensive game plan and, played right into it. And Jeremy and the offensive coaches did a great job there. And we executed it well. I was a little concerned because that first week of school or practice is always sluggish. Focus and concentration aren't always the greatest, and I was worried we'd make a lot of mental mistakes. But I think for the most part, we'll look at the film, but for the most part, we executed well.
Is there anything that you want to let the fans know about what to expect from Springford, just kind of an idea of what they're going to see next week?
Well, it's a totally different kind of offense. I mean, we've went 2 weeks now where teams tried to run the ball against us, running into our strength. Now, next week, we're going into 4 and 5 wides, throw the ball over the field. We'll be obviously still be missing Matt Fry, so it's going to be a real challenge for some of our twos to step it up, and it'll be a totally different kind of football game.
Well, fans, coaches, players, all feeling good after the first 2 weeks of Wilson football in 2019. And quite the start to our 75th season.
Feels good so far.
All right,
Let's hope it keeps on going.
Congratulations, Coach. Good luck next week, and hopefully we'll talk to you again then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so imagine what Coach Doms would have had to say if it was a loss.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a lot to say after a 61-14 victory.
He was prepared for the what do we need to work on yet question.
Well, he's the head coach. That's his job. And
anyone that has ever talked to him, and this is not just football. This is pretty much anything. He's not at all surprised by the answer. So he usually has a list of ways where things can be better.
The last thing to do before we move completely to spring forward is award our player of the game. Last week we left it up to the audience. They kind of chipped in. We were back and forth between offensive line, defensive line. We mentioned Troy Corson, and in the end, most people kind of leaned the way that we were leaning, and we went with the offensive line. So the 5 seniors in the offensive line, they were our players of the game for the Week 1 win against Central Dauphin. But for Week 2, we are going to go with an individual. There were a lot of options.
It was tough for different reasons. Like the stats weren't necessarily mind blowing in Week 1, but when you watched it, you were blown away by performances. There were really exceptional performances across the line, but that 9-minute drive in Week 1 kind of sealed the deal.
It,
to me. Like, it was a great game, but that 9-minute drive to ice the game sealed it.
And this week it's just super tough because
the wealth was spread.
Avanti, basically putting the game away with his 3 touchdowns immediately. Yeah. Like, he ended the game with those 3. Mason was kind of the exclamation point, getting 2 on his end on offense, also picking off a pass.
Right.
Then Brady hauling in these deep throws, getting 2 touchdowns himself. Caleb giving him the ball in that manner, allowing him to do so. The whole defense as a whole, limiting that explosive Nick Singleton and the Mifflin offense basically did nothing until the middle of the 4th quarter when those guys were done. Coach Wolver was down on the sideline by middle of the 3rd quarter.
Yeah.
It turned it over to assistant coaches to get their guys who they're familiar with relay the plays and tell them what to do. It was no longer Palm and Wolver. It was the next group of assistants were leading the team. Right. So, but where do you go with this? So, we're actually thinking outside of the box here because while the 3 of them or 4 of them that we mentioned all had incredible games, we kind of thought we'd go a little bit of a different direction here. Someone who did score, it is someone who had a touchdown, but sometimes it's important to remember the guys on the team that don't always see their names in the paper, but contribute so much behind the scenes and are a key cog in the development of a team. And, there's a lot of unheralded seniors that don't get to do that much.
Right.
And when they get on the field and do something and you see how excited everyone on the sidelines and the student section gets.
It gives me chills talking about it now.
And I didn't realize it as I was snapping the pictures because when I'm looking through my camera lens, it's tough sometimes to see what's going on. I just want to get the picture. And luckily I got the picture of this. And it was an incredible moment to see the reaction from everyone on the field and in the stands. So this week, our player of the game for his contributions to the program thus far is senior wide receiver, defensive back, Eamon Kenny against Mifflin. He had the 1 catch for 3 yards. And the touchdown, he had an additional rush for 8 yards in which he wouldn't go down. It took a swarm of Mifflin defenders to get him there. He threw in a little spin move, which I caught as well. And as has been mentioned by his teammates, that he is someone that always is putting himself on the back burner when it comes to what the team needs. It's always team first with him. So we're going with Eamon Kenny as our player of the game against Governor Mifflin.
And that's awesome. And I think you could see it, like you mentioned, during the game, how happy his teammates were for him, how happy the fans and the student section were for him. Like, it was awesome to see, see someone that puts in so much hard work and, like you said, doesn't necessarily get their name in the paper the way, somebody that's going to touch the ball, 15 times a game does, or something like that. It was awesome to have the opportunity to reward guys who work so hard and get their chance to shine. And man, did he make the most of it. Few touches, but got in the end zone. And like you said, the way he was running, and the way he got it and then head upfield, like they weren't going to stop him. It took a whole group of guys to try and bring him down. He was not going to be denied. And what an awesome experience! What an awesome memory! And not just a random game either. The Wilson Mifflin game, to get to do that in the Wilson Mifflin game is incredible, and something I'm sure will stick with him for a long time. And so, yeah, it's awesome. And just that mentality of kind of doing whatever it takes and, just seeing it through, I'm sure there have been some tough times for him, just as you go through practice and all that stuff, but to stick it out and to then finally get your moment is pretty awesome. So congratulations on an awesome game. It was a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah, congratulations to Eamon Kenny. And we look forward to seeing his contributions on the field the rest of the season, as well as those 4 guys and units that could have easily been player of the game.
It was very hard to pick, but in a game where it was kind of just so – there were numbers – you could use the numbers to justify anybody. We kind of went with those intangibles that we talk about a lot.
Right.
We talk about those things a lot, but it's hard to kind of quantify them. So when we get the chance to recognize that, I think it's awesome that we're got that chance to kind of see something a tangible result from those untangible skills, intangible.
And hopefully we'll get to see a few more seniors that don't get to produce as often get that chance this year as the team keeps taking care of business in the first 3 quarters.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So Wilson's next game is this Friday, September 6th. We're going down the Royersford to play Springford, and the Rams are off to a 1-1 start. They lost in week 1 to Central Bucks South. This was at home at Springford, 34-24, before rebounding this past week against Harry S. Truman from Philadelphia. They beat up on Truman pretty good, 58-19. But the Rams, they got hit by graduation for sure, but they did return a pretty decent amount on offense. They have experience and some depth there. 8 offensive starters back from last year, 6 returning on defense, but they were thin in the secondary, and Central Bucks South took advantage of that in the week 1 setback for the Rams. But when you have your starting quarterback, receiver, and top offensive lineman back, you're expecting the offense to be able to put up some points. And they've been able to do that, 24 in week 1, and 58, 59 in week 2. Yeah. So because of their offensive methodology with former Wilson coach Chad Brubaker there, this I believe is his 10th year with the Rams now, if you can believe that. And you heard Coach Wolber and Coach Doms mention that this is going to be, completely different from the first 2 weeks playing Central Dauphin and Governor Mifflin. Springford is 4 5 wide receiver sets. They're going to want to spread you out, mix it up, some trick plays, deep passes, and the secondary where Wilson maybe doesn't have as much depth and is suffering from that injury to Matt Fry. It's going to be a test for them. So you're going to see, your normal people playing in the secondary right now, Eli Rotenberg and Mason Leonard, Troy Corson, but you're going to definitely see a lot of Alex Gibble this week. You could see some Brady Gibble out there, and maybe even quarterback Caleb Brown returns to the defensive secondary just to counteract what Springford is going to throw at the Bulldogs this week. So they play in the Pioneer Athletic Conference. They're in the Liberty Division, and Coach Brubaker's really gotten that team to be a consistent challenger for the division crown and make some noise in the district playoffs as well. So Coach Brubaker, while he's been with Springford, has not yet beaten Wilson, and we know after talking to the coaches in the preseason that is always one that he's looking for.
Well, we talked about it too with this group of Wilson kids that were looking to beat Central Dauphin because this group had never beaten them. Well, that those feelings aren't unique to Wilson kids. In the situations may be unique, but they're not unique to Wilson kids. So when you look down at Springford, I am certain that they are going to be fired up and ready to go.
And their quarterback, Ryan Engro, he's the returning quarterback. He's already thrown for 530 yards in 2 games, 6 touchdowns to 2 interceptions.
He has a quarterback rating of over 100. And his number one returning target, was expected to be Dante Bonanni, and he is definitely fulfilling that role. 14 catches for 192 yards through the first 2 weeks of the season. The running back that's getting the most carries is number 6, Armonte Haynes. He has 192 rushing yards in the first 2 games, also scoring 2 touchdowns. So offensively, they could be a problem for Wilson. Unlike the first 2 teams that you heard Coach Dom say, it played into Wilson's strength. That front 7 or 8 guys along the defensive line and at the linebacker position, able to stuff Timmy Smith and Nick Singleton or anything that Mifflin threw at us. It's a little bit different this week. And we're going to have to see that secondary step up, and we're finally going to see maybe more of a rotation at tackle. You could probably see Venino and Keller move inside and allow some of the speed rushers to play on the end in juniors Ethan Capitano and Matt Schrufer.
Yeah, you look at it, what you have, or what you're going against is going to be very different, which isn't to say that you're going to not need the guys that have stepped up the last few weeks. You certainly are going to need those guys, but at the same time, you're going to need some of the guys who, like you said, it hasn't necessarily played to their strengths the last couple of weeks. They've had to do different things. They may be asked to do more in these games, so there wasn't a whole lot of drop back and pass. Central Dauphin did some in week 1. There wasn't much of that this past week, but there's going to be some of that on Friday. And if you're not able to get pressure up front, then that creates all kinds of issues on the back end. And so those are the things that, while not necessarily things they've had to face so far, they are certainly going to have to face those here. And like you said, you got to stay on your toes because Coach Brubaker is going to have them ready to go. And they'll know all the wrinkles and all that stuff. So they're going to be prepared. And again, like kind of visiting earlier in the show, it was great to see, a really solid performance on Friday night, but that's done now,
right.
And that's great. And that's something you can think back to, but there aren't really, you don't ever stand still. Like every week, all right, so they made a step from the scrimmage to week 1, they made a big step forward. And then I'd say they took another step forward this week. Well, if you don't follow it up with a good performance at Springford, you're not. It's kind of depending on how that goes. You can play well sometimes, and the other team just plays better. But you want to keep building on the solid performances. You don't want to just coast, because that's when things can start to go south. So if they continue to improve, we mentioned, and Coach Doms mentioned, a whole list of things that he has in mind to work on.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were many more too, but there are things to get better. While Friday night showed the strengths, it was not perfect. It never is going to be perfect, but you want to strive for that perfection. So when you keep going, keep building, and have that in mind, that will kind of help them continue to build. Basically, you're playing to your own standard, not the standard of the other teams.
And the players and coaching staff's already turned the page. The players will turn the page tonight as they go over the Mifflin film and they get ready for Springford, and then it's full on for Rams 2.0 here.
You heard Coach Wolver talk about, we started prepping for some of this in the summer.
Yeah.
Not just, and this is why, I know I'm not talking necessarily a lot of the people we talk to, but sometimes you see stuff that people aren't huge on the 7-on-7 camps and all that stuff. But listen, you need to be able to do that, and you also need to be able to defend that, because you're going to face it, and so you better be ready.
Right.
So,
and they will be, and I expect them to be.
Yeah.
It's going to be another fun one down at Royersford. Wilson, Springford, this Friday, September 6th, 7:00 down at the home of the Rams. So, but I think that's about it. That should wrap up episode 9 of our 5th season. And the way things are going, we have the potential to get in the high teens of shows this year if we continue doing one per week, which is the goal. And look forward to covering them for, another 2.5 months Hey, maybe even longer. Wouldn't that be great?
That would be great. That would be great.
If we're still doing this show in December, it was a good year.
Oh my gosh, it's a fantastic year.
And I know that's what the players have their overall sights set on, but they do know, as we've said multiple times this episode, week by week.
All right, that's right. So let's I'm sure they're going to start getting to work shortly on this upcoming week.
Absolutely.
Plenty of work to do.
So thank you again to our new sponsors, Topher's, and the anonymous sponsor who has joined up again, I believe right after last week's show. So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned them, as well. They want me to keep it anonymous.
We appreciate it.
We thank all of our sponsors and anyone that has helped us out over the last few years. We will be back in a week to recap the Springford game and preview the Manheim Central game. But I think that's everything. So,
I believe so.
For the Wilson Football Program and Justin Raffoff, I'm Joe Mays. Until next time, just remember, go Bulldogs.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Bulldog Hour. Want more Wilson football? Follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Or visit www.bulldoghour.com. The Bulldog Hour is a featured program on jmnjrradio.com.